Everybody, welcome Richard. So Richard Montoya is a recovery expert, speaker, and former nonprofit operator specializing in sober living and peer-based support systems. With advanced degrees in human services and special education, Richard brings both professional expertise and lived experience to his work in behavioral health. He has worked across treatment settings, recovery communities, and human service systems, and is committed to helping others access lasting transformation through empowerment and self awareness. So, we at CHOW are more than honored to have you here today, Rich, and I'll pass it over to you.
All right. Thank you very much for having me. This is exciting to be here and kind of representing Chow and a little bit about myself. Um, Exciting, when I first got into the restaurant industry, I was a young guy, and true story, my dad was a bartender. He used to go around restaurants singing Italian songs. He was a tenor, and he used to mix it all up. So, introduced that way, go to some of the nicer restaurants, and he'd give us $5 for eating half shells and those types of things. So he was really breaking us into class and taste, and knowing what a good setting is, a good environment, how to be healthy, and those types of things. So he was a great inspiration. He was a chemical engineer. He did start drinking in his 30s and drank for about 15 years. Became chronic, and he quit. So a good model, I guess, for sure. So for me, the restaurant industry taught me from the get-go, how to read a room, right? How to listen, how to take orders properly, how to communicate, how to show up. Those types of things I carried with me throughout my lifetime and even to what I do today. Um, I think it was such a challenge for me to be in the restaurant industry because I cycled through jobs. In the 80s and 90s, I had 54 jobs, right? So it's very likely 30, maybe 35 of those were in the restaurants. From 2000 to 2019, 34 jobs, right? And then when COVID hit, since then, I've had about 7 jobs. So well into the 90s as far as employment. So that tells you, wow, I'm bartending here and there. I'm in a metropolis, and I'm working lunches, dinners. I do some breakfast, and pretty much everything is downtown. So I was ripping and roaring, but I cycled through, not getting a lot of closure. Everything was pretty fun at the beginning, bartending and those types of things, and then having that amount of employment, you're not being stable, right? You're not getting opportunities to advance. Um, in my early 20s, some trauma, right? My brother had a car accident. He was bipolar, alcoholic, schizophrenic for the remainder of his life. Um, Denver Post News in the 90s said, man found dead behind high school. That was a good friend of mine. I think I saw him 5 days before that. I was in a car accident with a friend of mine. I was sitting in the back seat. We hit somebody from behind, and she was killed. Right. So those three things traumatized me to the point where I I disassociated a lot of things from my lifestyle, my what I did for work, how I emotionally regulated myself as far as a person, and didn't do it very well. I think it was a tough time for me. I had in the 80s and 90s, I had several DUIs, right? So I'm caught up in the system now. I'm on probation, those types of things. I had 21 violations of the law, whether it be probation violation, trespassing. I had just a number of those. So I'm balancing act, employment, uh, the system, and, just trying to see clearly, what was happening. In the well, we'll just jump right into in 1990. I went to treatment. It was a 2-year program. Um, did 8 months there, and I started college after 3 failed attempts. So I got my bachelor's degree in 2000, when I was a junior in college, I got a DUI, and the judge says, "Mr. Montoya, I'm going to let you graduate, but I would like to see you in my courtroom when you graduate." So he gave me a year to do my senior year, and then I went to see him in January, and he gave me 5 years community corrections after I got my degree. Right, so I'm like, boy, talk about a setback. I'm caught up in the cycle, right? If my degree's in human services and I went from culinary services to human services, what does that look like as a person who is in service, has some of those culinary skills, and at the same time able to deliver? It's called service delivery, right? How am I delivering services not only to, individuals, but the community, and even to myself, right? So, wow. So bump in the road. Um, I get through that, and then I start my master's program in special education. The Department of Education says they will approve you for licensure to teach in the state in 6 to 8 weeks. It took them 16 months because I had microfished archived records in California from the 80s, and they denied me licensure to teach in the state of Colorado after almost finishing my program. So return to use, full cycle, relapse, and I'm back going, okay, this is not good. Um, so during all this time, I'm finding ways to survive, right? And how was that done? I needed more. I couldn't balance a lot of things out. Everything's kind of tumbling, right? I'm on a roll, and I'm it's it was time to slow down, I guess is a good word. So I started running at the age of 40, and I figured because I have those DUIs, I was without a license for 16 years, right? So I started running at 40, and that kind of triggered some reconnections in my brain, right? So I'm running, I'm cycling, and as a younger person, I was a swimmer. So I'm like, okay, I got the trifecta here. Um, I ran one marathon in my life. It was the Colfax Marathon. I qualified for the Boston Marathon with this one race, right? So, how did that happen where I could, train for it and just, handle that, right? Anger management, right? Self-regulation. I'm pushing all my buttons, man. I'm pushing myself to the tilt because my education's not getting me anywhere. Sobriety, pieces here and there aren't getting me anywhere. I'm about to explode, right? So I start doing this heavy duty running, and I'm still drinking at the time, but I was able to accomplish that. So that was pretty huge. Um, I think what I learned is that I'm rebuilding, right? So in 2014, I decided I'm going to do the Ironman triathlon, the first Ironman triathlon in Boulder, Colorado, right? So I should have done the swim in an hour and 40 minutes. It took 2 hours and 19 minutes. I hyperventilated. So I jump on my bike. I get to mile 86. They pull me off the track. I'm 6 minutes late. So I was supposed to do 112 miles there and then run a marathon at the end. Didn't finish, but I think I probably could have. But it was tough just because of the hyperventilation. Um, so once again, trying to find things that are working for me, and that didn't really help me um, to get past some of those mile markers, right? I'm still kind of drinking, and I'm trying to prove myself, right? Who am I proving myself to? I don't know really, right? I'm trying to prove it to myself. I'm trying to get beyond what I already know, right? So how does that happen? I for from 2000 to 2019, still kind of doing my thing. I We had four loss of life from 2014 to 2019. I lost my dad, my brother, another family member, and it was tough, right? Two of those losses were just of natural causes, right? So heavy duty losses, right? So I'm like, okay, I got to be sober, dry sober. So that was another challenge. Okay, so I've got to be the responsible person here. I've got to make sure that things are taken care of. So I did that, and then in 2019 hit Cedar, and it was tough because I didn't know at that point that that was my breaking point. Right, I lost loved ones. Um, what I've done in the past hasn't got me sober. Where am I at today? So um, regrouped. I was in treatment for 17 days, and because I had so much treatment, they were like, "Dude, you are okay. You are good, man. Don't be so hard on yourself. You've been through so much, bro. Just let it go. The doors are open for you. You're good to go." Right? Never heard that before. Nobody ever came across me with the green light. Right? So did 17 months, and I'm telling them, hey, I'm doing IOP, and I'm like 6 weeks into IOP once a week, and they said, dude, you're good. By comparison, man, you've done the work. Um, you are significantly far beyond any of these others that are here today, and we give you the green light. So that was my ticket, right? I took a lot of labels, right? They say like lift a label. There's some programs that do that. They're being an alcoholic, right? What does that mean to me, right? It doesn't hold any weight anymore, right? Addiction, not holding a lot of weight. Even recovery has its purpose here, but it's my well-being now, right? So I'm advancing my process to the point where, okay, how am I doing well, and how do I know that, right? So recovery capital. We start using words that mean something. Community support, safe spaces, well-being, lived experience. What does that all that mean? So um, after 10 years of of cleaning up my act, you're able to clear background checks, right? So what does that mean? So I cleared a background check for a couple jobs, and I'm like, that's really true, right? So I got a job at a University of Arizona, global campus, and I do that for 4 years, right? Right before COVID started. Pretty awesome. I'm kicking butt. I'm a admissions specialist, and I get to go to school for free. So I'm like, okay, what do I want to do? I did some. I tried a couple programs, and they said I'll just do a master's in human services. So finished that up. I'm like, okay, I got to get back into human services. I've got all these skills. I'm able to communicate. I got a good education behind me. Let's take this sobriety to the next level. So started working with at-risk youth at can't recall it now, but then for the last 5 years, I've been working in treatment facilities. QMAP, which allows me to give out medications. Um, Very intense environment where you have 20, 30, even a program I was in, 80 people coming in, just early recovery, right? What kind of information can you provide? How can you be a model and really not give them the book, right? People are book smart and they say, well, I got to do this, do that. Not the best way to address it, because of my own time in recovery and from being in programs where people are trying to recover. I'm looking at the rainbow, right? So from here to there, where are people struggling, and how can we better provide services to this population, right? So, hey, 2000, well, last year, I got my peer certification. So I'm a Colorado peer and family specialist, right? So I don't have any clients. I'm not a recovery coach, But what that means to me is that I'm closing the gap between clinicians and people in recovery. I'm able to give my voice at a high level, and I'm able to represent the population itself, right? So I'm able to push the envelope or raise the bar to the point where it makes sense, right? Because people would rather listen to me or work with me as a peer specialist 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, my assignment, what I do for a living, than listen to a licensed social worker for 1 hour a week and make some goals, right? So they're like, Rich has just given me a whole lot of information just by knowing, you know, some of those things that we go through, right? So pretty pretty well heard, right? And one of the better things that I've learned about myself over the last 10, 15 years is that I'm doing I'm doing what is called today shadow work, right? I start studying some of this shadow work and I'm like, wow, I've been doing this for 10, 15 years, not knowing that this is what I'm doing. I'm self-regulating. I'm identifying shame and guilt. Um, what has been toxic for me, what has been healthy shame, um, pain. What kind of pain have I gone through? Emotional regulation versus emotional containment, right? What does that mean? That means I'm not blowing things off. I'm not saying, hey, it's cool. I got it. Don't worry about it, man. I'll get with it tomorrow. Where I'm actually containing my emotions, not putting my feelings out there, not recognizing, you know, what I've accomplished. So in all this time, I managed to do a lot of writing, right? This is just writing. It's been edited 5 times. Nobody's read this. This is my safe space. This is self-regulation for me, right? This is good stuff. And then you jump on to this. This is my writing in a binder. It's about 180 pages. It's been edited 4 or 5 times. So I'm really learning about myself, right? And the more you write, the more you kind of understand, hey, that came out like authentic, right? That's good stuff. So then it developed into something more. So I'm just going to share my screen real quick and give you what that looks like, right? Hopefully we can do this. I bet you I can't, only because we'll try Chrome. Oh no, we'll Chrome tab. Can we do it? Yeah, I'm on
You got plenty of time, so take your time. We're good.
okay. Can you see my screen? Okay. Yeah. So what I'm going to show you is what I take to treatment programs um, every time I go. This is my story, right? Very detailed. It lets you know, hey, this guy did the work. And when you're talking about in recovery or your well-being in general, hey, put in the work, right? So definitely
So
that's something
I'm
that
not sure if
I've
you want to have a different thing on the screen. What I'm seeing is our CHOW page.
okay.
So you might have a different tab that you want to put up. Not that I don't like
Yeah,
seeing my own face, but
right. Wow. Yeah, I don't think that's even going to work because I see that space. Are you able to see this?
I'm still seeing the CHOW thing.
Okay.
If you hit share, it should have like different tabs come up and just make sure you're clicking on the tab that you want to show.
Yeah, it wants me to open up that.
Um,
Okay. So we're gonna skip that. So we're not gonna share that no more. Am I back? Okay. So anyway, it's a poster board, and it's a track, and it says Montoya 500, and it gives you my storyline. So you go around the track, you kind of learn some things, and it has all those incidences of what I went through, and then it went into an AI image, right? So it's pretty cool because I've been working on this for like 15 years. So it really gives my growth and my challenges and how I moved into a recovery expert, right? I think the more you struggle, I think it's the spectrum, right? The bigger the rainbow, right? And so I do believe that with all my experiences, I'm able to not only jump in a person's shoes and kind of recognize where they're coming from, because it's emotional intelligence, right? Emotional regulation. A lot of that fun stuff is something you just learn along the way. It's got meaning, and I don't need the answers. I just need meaning, right? I need some things that are going to move this forward. Um, Other than that, I think I've hit most of my stuff. It's there's other words that I can get to. Radical acceptance, right? That's big in the recovery world. Um, I I haven't worked in the culinary industry for like 10 years now. The last time I did, I was a cyclist for Jimmy John's downtown Denver, and then in the evening I went to the arena, where the Nuggets play, and the Avalanche, and then concerts, and then Circus Olay. So that was the last two jobs I had. Great time, right? I had so much fun doing that it was just one of the better times where I really locked in. But
That's cool. What were
yeah,
you doing
all in
at the
all.
concerts and the arena? Were you selling like,
Oh no, no, I was all the Nuggets games. I was on the first two rows, so I was taking orders and I was delivering orders courtside.
oh, that's cool.
Yeah, yeah, it was a lot of energy there. So a lot of times,
Yeah,
yeah, it was intense. I saw so many concerts. It was pretty sweet. Yeah, it's that was good times, and I think I just I cycled through that, and I just thought to myself, what's in this? Where is this really taking me? Right? You can't stay in a place that you've outgrown, I guess.
yeah.
Right? So my services now are just um, so advanced, right? I currently work at the Fort Logan mental hospital,
Hmm.
right? I work on a unit that is competency clients through the judicial system, right? So they come to us unmedicated out of the county jails, right? And they are waiting to go to court to see if they're competent or not competent to stand trial. So we got 22 guys that come in just there, right? Mental health wise, they are, hey, who is this guy? What does he want?
Yeah.
They're hopping, right? So, how do you connect? How do service delivery from the point of not only maybe the culinary industry, because I do serve them food, and when I say chow, that doesn't mean um, chow time, more or less. It doesn't mean you're in jail and it's chow time to go eat. It means this is culinary hospitality outreach and wellness. This is what I provide for you, right? And they're kind of looking at me like, yes, this is something I do on the side, and it kind of gets them thinking, right? Providing a little hope, right? Get that, just get that connection, original, authentic. Hey, this guy is himself, right?
Yeah.
He's got a real nice skill. I like listening to this dude, right? So that's awesome, right? I think being there, I think staff sees something in me that's kind of, it's very unique, right? He flows. He's got good vibe. He delivers pretty well, and it's just a lot of work done on my end and going through some tough times, but keeping those skills that are so essential for the people in hospitality. Just the word itself is says a lot, right? I mean, I look for making that connection in counseling. You're providing what uh, trust and rapport, you know, And many people in the industry have these counseling skills that you can take you to the next level and even advance them to the point where, hey, you're really giving back at a high level. Your gratitude is measured every day, and when you're able to do that and give back, it just feels good. My container's full, right? Everything that kind of comes out is just kind of just flowing, right? So pretty great as far as what that looks like and how I'm able to make that happen. So
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, before we pass it over for questions and answers, I just kind of had maybe a little bit of a more of a detailed question. Is do you utilize those clients, or are those clients utilizing CHOW, or any of your clients? Are you directing them towards the service industry at all when they come in and they're looking for help? Do you get a lot of people you're like, oh, the service industry or hospitality may be right for you, and how can I guide you to that?
um, I I would say no. I think some of the guys pick up on what I do and how I say things because I say things intentionally where I'm trying to make a point, right? So when I get to the point, I need to know if it's okay to move on, right?
Mhm.
So I think the main focus is building that connection and knowing it's okay to be a guy, be a
Yeah,
dude, and be cool. You don't have to play macho or anything like that because you're not in a position to do that. What we like about what we do is we let them be who they need to be,
yeah,
right? And that's key. Um, they dig me. They know what I say because the way I serve, food, I'm like, hey, I set up their fork on the left, and
yeah.
but see, the funny
Yes.
thing is that, yeah, these we use paper spoons, right? So they fold in half, and very unique as far as culinary experience, right? Serving with paper spoon. So that's a whole different story. So we keep these guys in check and make sure, hey, you're all right today. Let's just get through this, right? So kind of just a different perspective for sure.
Vanessa had a question too, if you don't mind us answering this.
Yeah.
We could probably keep recording. Um, while working with peer support in such heavy situations, how do you keep yourself centered?
So centered for me is it's very unique, right? So what I do is I take things to the threshold, the moment, I guess is a good word. I take the moment to the threshold, and then the in between this and that, or the next breath or the next word I say, I want to hold my space for a minute, right? So I can do maybe some breathing exercises, something that I know that works. I could just maybe tap myself and say, "Hey, hold on, don't make a move yet." I like to hold my space and even ground myself real quick. Dig my toes in the ground, do some real quick responses to myself to make sure that I'm ready to move forward in a healthy way, right? And I practice that a lot because it works very well with the population, right? If somebody launches off and they get to a higher level, they're at a 5, 6, 7. Um, how do we maintain, right? Well, your proximities, things, tone of voice, and it's being self-aware, right, and self-regulating, and knowing how to do that. It takes a lot of practice, and I think over time, you could get really good at it.
And I noticed you said men a couple times. Are you working mostly with men when you're in these situations?
Yeah, it's the highest acuity. It's the clients with the most mental health issues, right? Because they have a co-ed group, but they have two. Um, we have them civil and forensic. There's two forensics. That's co-ed, and then I work with forensic side, all male. Yeah, they come heavy.
And do you work with the maybe with the people in their lives, with the if the men have other people that are affected by their situation, do you also bring them into this, or you work directly with the men?
Um, I'm providing milieu management, right? So we get them outside on the yards. I tell guys, if we're looking here and our eyes are good, we're not worried about anything else going on. If
Yeah.
we're communicating, that's all I'm worried about. Our guys are just managed in a way that is psychiatrically the best way to do it, right? So we have licensed social workers, um, we have psychiatrists, and then case managers, and we're high level, right? This is as intense as it gets before you go to Pueblo or something. So um, it's different. I think we try to keep the place safe.
I guess one last question for me is, have you transferred that, Vanessa asked, how do you stay centered in her
Right.
question? But I was saying, when you mentioned working at the arena and all that energy, do you transfer some of that like ability to, and even as you grew up, reading a room, seeing how people, watching people's physical bodies and how they're communicating to you through their bodies or through their actions. Do you utilize those skills that you learned in the service industry in order to read a room or to read a person that you're working with? And how do those two skills either run parallel to each other or translate from one to the other, if that's the case?
I would say if you look at somebody who's hungry and they're sitting at your table, it could be very similar to somebody who's agitated, you know, and I think it's very transferable because I know the look, right? I know that look. Person looks thirsty, right? He needs some more water. Hey, I need my coffee now, right? So yeah, very transferable in a very nice way, right? I'm reading things, I'm feeling things. Give me something that I could work with. I need originality. Don't sell me any lines. Take your order. And where I work, we give orders and we take orders, and those orders come directly from a psychiatrist, right? Let's do this with them. Let's make sure they get their medications. Let's get them stable. How are we doing that without this, that, and the other? Or maybe so I get a tip, right? So that kind of thing. So it all goes together. What I do and how I learned how to do it. I think with all those skills as a server, you know, I serve the community now, and that's the big picture. And I think everybody has that skill, and it's an awesome skill to have. And I see it all the time with culinary people in service industry, and
Perfect.
that's what I like about it. They're there,
Yeah.
they're with it. You know,
Thanks. Yeah, it's a great point. I really think that people in the service industry are unique in their skill, in their ability to read people and how they act. Stephanie, did you have a question?
I did. I wanted to know, you were talking about your writing. Is it writing for yourself, like journal? Like, is it in the form of a journal, or are you writing like a book, or just keeping track of, you know, the path
I
that you're
think
on?
I think it will be a book, but at the same time, I needed a an outlet. At the time, it's like my running, right? That was an outlet. I think my writing was an outlet because once I started doing it, it felt right. And, you know, I'm a very good poet now. I think once you start writing, then, you're able to speak well. I think listening and knowing how to say things. I think it's very much ready for that. But it's 10 years of my life that were the most challenging, right? So from day one of my worst scenario to getting through that 10 years of, hey,